Well, hello. Let's see if it catches on here. There it is. My computer died literally like 2 seconds before my video uploaded. So I have to do it again. And it shows on my screen, it just doesn't show that it's saved. It's peachy. Love technology. So we are going to jump back. See, there's the video. It just says pending. We'll get out of that. All right, guys. Let's pick up where we have been for a little while. Let me scroll here. So we're going to be in Matthew 18. We're going to read 1 through 14 together. We're going to be in Mark 9, 33 through 50, and Luke 9, 46 through 50. We don't need to read Luke because it just repeats what Mark says. Mark has a couple of different things than Matthew, but let's go ahead and jump in and record this for the second time. So it should be easier this time, right? All right, so we're in Matthew 18:1. Read along with me here. At that time, the disciples came to Jesus saying, "Who then is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" And I should say that in Mark 9, if we toggle over there real quick, he has a little bit better intro to that conversation here. So in verse 33, then he came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he asked them, "What was it you disputed amongst yourselves on the road?" And of course, Jesus already knows. But they kept silent, for on the road they disputed amongst themselves who would be the greatest. And he sat down and called the 12 and said to them, "If anyone desires to be the first, he shall be the last of all and servant of all." Then he took a little child and set him in the midst of them. And he had taken him in his arms. He said to them, "Whoever receives one of these little children in my name receives me. And whoever receives me receives not me, but him who sent me." And so let's jump over to Matthew and continue that dialogue there. And so Jesus called the child to him, right? And so and said, "Assuredly I say to you, unless you are converted and become as little children, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever humbles himself as this little child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever receives one little child like this in my name receives me. But whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck and he were drowned in the depth of the sea." That is intense. "Woe to the world because of offenses, for offenses must come, but woe to the man by whom the offenses come. If your hand or foot causes you to sin, cut it off, cast it from you. It is better for you to enter into life lame or maimed, rather than having 2 hands and 2 feet to be cast into the everlasting fire. And if your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out, cast it from you. It is better for you to enter into life with 1 eye, rather than having 2 eyes and be cast into hellfire." And so let's stop for just a moment. What Jesus is doing is creating an analogy here of little children who are dependent on their father, right? Just as we should be dependent on our father, right? He has reiterated a couple of times the amount that we should be dependent on him for just our daily and basic needs, right? God knows us. But here to be dependent on him for all things, right? For our spiritual, emotional needs, right? And so as opposed to, because they're debating who's the greatest of them, right? Who knows more? Who's Jesus's favorite, God's favorite? Who's doing the best job? Whatever it may be, right? And so Jesus is creating, a comparison here that you need to humble yourself and to be dependent on the Father. It's not about how much you know and how much you can do. It's about what the Father does through you, right? When you receive Jesus, that's how you receive the Father, okay? Jesus gives all credit to the Father, right? Not just you need to receive me, right? When you receive me, you actually receive the one who sent me, right? And so Jesus deflects all honor, right, to the Father, and he's telling us that just as these little children who depend on their Father, right, we need to humble ourselves and depend on our Father. It's not about our name, it's about what we know, right? And so let's jump over, and the amount, that what he says about the offenses coming to a small child, right, is really intense. And so what this says about who we should be to young believers, right, and small children in our presence. But let's jump over to Mark 9 really quick. And we will read starting in verse 38, because we just read the ones preceding there. "So now John answered him, saying, 'Well, teacher, we saw someone who does not follow us casting out demons in your name, and we forbade him, because he does not follow us. But Jesus said, "Do not forbid him, for no one who works a miracle in my name can soon afterwards speak evil of me. For he who is not against us is on our side. For whoever gives you a cup of water to drink in my name, because you belong to Christ, assuredly I say to you, he will by no means lose his reward." So the disciples here are wanting to be exclusive. They're a little group of special 12 followers, right, of Jesus. And so they're wanting what the miracles and the healings and the things they do to be exclusive. But we're going to find that they're going to have a lot of followers. That's their job, right, to go out and create the church. And so, but even at this point, we have the followers of John, the followers of Jesus, right? And of course, we have people under the disciples. We have specific chosen ones that we've discussed throughout that have been given certain abilities, right, to perform in the name of the Lord, right, these healings and casting out of demons and stuff. And so, but they want to be exclusive, and they saw someone, working in Jesus' name, right, and then forbid him. He's like, "You don't follow me," right? And so Jesus, he puts that out real quickly, and puts them in their place, that it's not exclusive to them. It's about Christ, right? It's about the Father. And so let's read just a little bit more down here. So we've already read, he gives it a little bit more detail about entering into, life maimed rather than, with 2 feet and having sinned, right? And so, but let's go down here to verse 49. "For everyone will be seasoned with fire, and every sacrifice will be seasoned with salt. Salt is good, but if salt loses its flavor, how will you season it? Have salt in yourselves, and have peace with one another." And so he's telling them here, don't to be salty, right? We have those t-shirts, being salty, but in this sense, and for real, be salty, right? To be salty means that you would create a thirst in someone else, right? And that's how we should be living our Christian lives, to be creating a thirst in those around us, right, for that living water. And so they are seeing how we live our lives, which is creating a hunger or a thirst in them for Jesus, right? Not for us, but for Jesus. And again, he already, swept this idea that there's exclusivity. It was not about them. It's about Christ. And there was just one more thing. It's actually back in Matthew 18:10 here. We'll jump back to real fast. "So take heed that you do not despise one of these little ones. For I say to you that in heaven their angels always see the face of the Father who is in heaven. For the Son of Man has come to save that which was lost." So, and then we have the parable of the lost sheep, which we all know he leaves the 99 to save the one, right? And so how important that lost one is to God. But in this instance, I want to point out that it says, "For I say to you that their angels," talking about the little ones, the children, right? "Their angels always see the face of the Father who is in heaven," right? This is perhaps telling us that all children have a guardian angel, right? But more importantly, that these angels are always in the presence of God, which should define our character and how we behave, being that we are always being watched. The children are being watched, so how we're treating the children, right, and the young in faith, how we are treating them, not being a stumbling block. We see what he says about stumbling blocks, right? Not being a stumbling block in their life, because our behavior and character is always in the presence of the angels who are in the presence of the Father. And that's how important our behavior is, and what people see when we are being a depiction of Christ, right? When we say that we are Christian, when we are Christ followers, what people see of us, of what we do, matters, right? And so, and not just, of course, for others to not be the stumbling block, but that, our actions are in the presence of God. And so that is what should be settling heavy on us. So let's wrap this up for the second time, and I will see you guys again soon.